everyone, it's me back again. Thanks for joining me for part two of the story Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Kurt Vonnegut Jr. So you may remember that we left off in the story with Gramps discovering Lou doing what he thought was diluting Gramps' anti-gerasone solution. Lou actually was not diluting Gramps' anti-gerasone. Morty had emptied Gramps' anti-gerasone and had refilled it with water. Lou then went and dumped the water out of the bottle and was refilling it with the full strength anti-gerasone solution. He accidentally dropped the bottle and it smashed on the floor, which is when Gramps came in and discovered Lou. And Gramps had thought that Lou was actually the one who was trying to kill him by diluting his anti-gerasone solution. So keep in mind that we're in the year 2158, and this anti-gerasone serum has been invented to prevent people from aging and therefore prevent them from dying. They don't die of old age. And there are no diseases left in the world either. So essentially no one dies unless they choose to stop taking the anti-gerasone solution, which few people do. Perhaps once they get to a certain age, they decide they're tired of life and decide to stop taking their anti-gerasone, and then they would age and die normally. But it sounds like very few people do make that decision. So what we're left with is a world that is way overpopulated, and so resources such as food and living space are really hard to come by. Kind of like toilet paper is hard to come by right now. So we kind of are getting a small taste of what's going on. So the Schwartz family lives in an apartment, a one bedroom, one bathroom apartment in New York City. And they've got 23 people living in this tiny little apartment. So let's get back to the story where we left off. Let's dive right in. Lou and Emerald stayed fearfully awake almost all night, waiting to see what Gramps was going to do. But not a sound came from the sacred bedroom. At 2 hours before dawn, the pair dropped off to sleep. At 6 o'clock they rose again, for it was time for their generation to eat breakfast in the kitchenette. No one spoke to them. They had 20 minutes in which to eat, but their reflexes were so dulled by the bad night they had had, they hardly swallowed 2 mouthfuls of egg-type processed seaweed before it was time to surrender their place to their son's generation. Then, as was the custom for whomever had been the most recently disinherited, they began preparing Gramps' breakfast, which would presently be served to him in bed on a tray. They tried to be cheerful about it. The toughest part of the job was having to handle the eggs and bacon and oleomargarine on which Gramps spent almost all the income from his fortune. "Well," said Emerald, "I'm not going to get all panicky until I'm sure there's something to be panicky about." "Maybe he doesn't even know what it was." "I busted," said Lou hopefully. "Probably thinks it was your watch crystal," said Eddie, their son, who was toying apathetically with his buckwheat-type processed sawdust cakes. "Don't get sarcastic with your father," said Em, "and don't talk with your mouth full either." "I'd like to see anybody take a mouthful of this stuff and not say something," said Eddie, who was 73. He glanced at the clock. "It's time to take Gramps' breakfast, you know." "Yeah, it is, isn't it?" said Lou weakly. He shrugged. "Let's have the tray, Em." "We'll both go." Walking slowly, smiling bravely, they found a large semicircle of long-faced Schwartzes standing around the bedroom door. Em knocked. "Gramps," she said brightly, "breakfast is ready." There was no reply, and she knocked again, harder. The door swung open before her fist. In the middle of the room, the soft, deep, wide, canopied bed, the symbol of the sweet by and by to every Schwartz, was empty. a sense of death as unfamiliar to the Schwartzes as Zoroastrianism or the causes of the Sepoy Mutiny, stilled every voice and slowed every heart. Awed, the heirs began to search gingerly under the furniture and behind the drapes for all that was mortal of Gramps, father of the race. But Gramps had left not his earthly husk, but a note, which Lou finally found on the dresser under a paperweight, which was a treasured souvenir from the 2000 World's Fair. Unsteadily, Lou read it aloud. Somebody who I have sheltered and protected and taught the best I know how all these years last night turned on me like a mad dog and diluted my anti-gerasone, or tried to. I am no longer a young man. I can no longer bear the crushing burden of life as I once could. So, after last night's bitter experience, I say goodbye. The cares of this world will soon drop away like a cloak of thorns, and I shall know peace. By the time you find this, I will be gone. Gosh, said Willie brokenly. He didn't even get to see how the 500-mile speedway race was going to come out. Or the World Series, said Eddie. Or whether Mrs. McGarvey got her eyesight back, said Morty. There's more, said Lou. And he began reading aloud again. I, Harold D. Schwartz, do hereby make, publish, and declare this to be my last will and testament, hereby revoking any and all former wills and codicils by me at any time heretofore made. No, cried Willie, not another one. I do stipulate, read Lou, that all of my property, of whatsoever kind and nature, not be divided, but do devise and bequeath it to be held in common by my issue, without regard for generation, equally, share and share alike. Issue, said Emerald. Lou included the multitude in a sweep of his hand. It means we all own the whole shooting match. All eyes turned instantly to the bed. Share and share alike, said Morty. Actually, said Willie, who was the oldest person present, it's just like the old system, where the oldest people head up things with their headquarters in here, and I like that, said Lou owns as much of it as you do, and I say it ought to be for the older ones who's still working. You can snooze around here all day waiting for your pension check, and poor Lou stumbles in here after work all tuckered out, and how about letting somebody who's never had any privacy get a little crack at it, said Eddie hotly. You old people had plenty of privacy back when you were kids. I was born and raised in the middle of the barracks in the hall. How about... Yeah, said Morty. Sure, you've all had it pretty tough, and my heart bleeds for you. But try honeymooning in the hall for a real kick. Silence, shouted Willie imperiously. The next person who opens his mouth spends the next 6 months by the bathroom. Now clear out of my room. I want to think. A vase shattered against the wall, inches above his head. In the next moment, a free-for-all was underway, with each couple battling to eject every other couple from the room. Fighting coalitions formed and dissolved with the lighting changes of the tactical situation. Em and Lou were thrown into the hall, where they organized others in the same situation and stormed back into the room. After 2 hours of struggle, with nothing like a decision in sight, the cops broke in. For the next half hour, patrol wagons and ambulances hauled away Schwartzes, and then the apartment was still and spacious. An hour later, Films of the last stages of the riot were being televised to 500 million delighted viewers on the eastern seaboard. In the stillness of the three-room Schwartz apartment on the 76th floor of Building 257, the television set had been left on. Once more, the air was filled with the cries and grunts and crashes of the fray, coming harmlessly now from the loudspeaker. The battle also appeared on the screen of the television set in the police station, where the Schwartzes and their captors watched with professional interest. Em and Lou were in adjacent 4x8 cells and were stretched out peacefully on their cots. "Em," called Lou through the partition, "you got a wash basin all your own too?" "Sure, wash basin, bed, light, the works. Ha! And we thought Gramps' room was something. How long's this been going on?" She held out her hand. "For the first time in 40 years, hon, I haven't got the shakes." "Cross your fingers," said Lou. "The lawyer's going to try to get us a year." "Gee," said Em dreamily. "I wonder what kind of wires you'd have to pull to get solitary." "All right, pipe down," said the turnkey, "or I'll toss the whole kit and caboodle of you right out. And first one who lets on to anybody outside how good jail is ain't never getting back in." The prisoners instantly fell silent. The living room of the Schwartz apartment darkened for a moment as the riot scene faded, and then the face of the announcer appeared, like the sun coming from behind a cloud. "And now, friends," he said, "I have a special message from the makers of Anti-Gerasone, a message for all you folks over 150. Are you hampered socially by wrinkles, by stiffness of joints and discoloration or loss of hair, all because these things came upon you before Anti-Gerasone was developed? Well, if you are, you need no longer suffer, need no longer feel different and out of things. After years of research, medical science has now developed super anti-gerasone. In weeks, yes, weeks, you can look, feel, and act as young as your great-great-grandchildren. Wouldn't you pay $5,000 to be indistinguishable from everybody else? Well, you don't have to. Safe, tested, super anti-gerasone costs you only dollars a day. The average cost of regaining all the sparkle and attractiveness of youth is less than $50. Right now for your free trial carton, just put your name and address on a $1 postcard and mail it to Super, Box 500,000, Schenectady, New York. Have you got that? I'll repeat it. Super, Box. Underlining the announcer's words was the scratching of Gramps' fountain pen, the one Willie had given him the night before. He had come in a few minutes previous from the Idle Hour Tavern, which commanded a view of Building 257 across the square of asphalt known as the Alden Village Green. He had called a cleaning woman to come straighten the place up, and had hired the best lawyer in town to get his descendants a conviction. Gramps had then moved the daybed before the television screen so that he could watch from a reclining position. It was something he dreamed of doing for years. "Schenectady," mouthed Gramps. "Got it." His face had changed remarkably. His facial muscles seemed to have relaxed, revealing kindness and equanimity under what had been taut, bad-tempered lines. It was almost as though his trial package of super anti-gerasone had already arrived. When something amused him on television, he smiled easily, rather than barely managing to lengthen the thin line of his mouth a millimeter. Life was good. He could hardly wait to see what was going to happen next. So just to recap and clarify the ending of the story, so Gramps essentially faked his own death and left a new will for his descendants, stating that instead of dividing up all of the possessions, they had to share all of Gramps' possessions. This caused a huge fight within amongst the Schwartzes, and they eventually all got taken to jail. When they got taken to jail, they actually realized that jail was pretty nice because they each had their own private cell with their own sink and their own bed and their own lamp and more space than what they're actually used to having. So they're actually kind of happy to be in jail. And once they were all settled in jail, Gramps returned back to the apartment, which he will now not have to share with anyone. And then the kind of the cherry on top is that now there's been a new development of super anti-gerasone, which can actually de-age people. Instead of just stopping the aging process, this can actually reverse the aging process. So Gramps will now be able to take super anti-gerasone and look and feel younger than he ever has, or that he has in a really long time, and presumably live a lot more years as long as he wants to. So I hope you guys enjoyed Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Feel free to leave me some comments below, and I look forward to our next reading. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.